What if I told you that the people who have been draining your energy, stealing your confidence, and quietly controlling your emotions all share one weakness? They cannot stand someone who has mastered themselves. They can handle anger because anger is predictable. They can handle arguments because arguments keep you trapped. They can even handle your kindness because they know how to take advantage of it. But there are a few powerful habits they never know how to respond to, and once you develop them, the entire relationship changes. The power shifts. The control disappears. Suddenly, the person who once manipulated you begins losing influence. Not because you became louder, but because you became stronger where it truly matters. Most people spend their lives trying to change toxic people. That is the wrong goal. You cannot control another person's behavior, but you can become someone their behavior no longer affects. That is a completely different level of strength, and very few people ever reach it. The truth is, toxic people don't fear powerful words. They fear powerful habits. They fear people who no longer need approval. They fear those who stay calm under pressure. They fear individuals who know when to walk away, protect their peace, and refuse to play emotional games. Now, today, you are about to discover 8 habits that completely transform the way difficult people respond to you. These are not tricks, clever comebacks, or manipulation tactics. They are lasting shifts in the way you think, speak, and carry yourself. By the end of this video, you'll understand why some people naturally command respect without raising their voice, why toxic people lose their influence over them, and how you can build the same quiet strength in your own life. Stay with me until the very end, because the final habit is the one that changes everything. And once you understand it, you'll never look at difficult people the same way again. There is a question that most people never stop to ask themselves, and yet the answer determines the quality of almost every relationship they have. Why do I feel the need to explain every decision I make? Why do I feel uncomfortable when someone misunderstands me? Why do I rush to defend myself the moment someone questions my choices? If you've ever found yourself doing this, you're not alone. Most people are conditioned from childhood to believe that being understood is the same as being respected. We grow up thinking that if we simply explain ourselves well enough, patiently enough, and thoroughly enough, everyone will eventually see our intentions. But life has a way of teaching a very different lesson. Not everyone wants clarity, some people want control. That is one of the hardest truths to accept because it forces you to see human behavior differently. Toxic people rarely ask questions because they genuinely want answers. More often, they ask questions because they want access to your confidence. Every explanation you offer gives them another opportunity to challenge you, twist your words, or make you doubt your own judgment. Think about how many conversations have left you mentally exhausted. You explained your reasons. You clarified your intentions. You answered every accusation with patience. Yet somehow, by the end of the conversation, you felt more confused than when it started. That wasn't because your explanation lacked logic. It was because logic was never the point. Manipulation does not seek understanding. It seeks participation. The moment you begin defending every decision, you have unknowingly accepted an invisible contract. You have agreed that someone else has the authority to approve or reject the direction of your life. That is an incredibly dangerous position because your peace becomes dependent on another person's opinion. Power begins the moment that contract ends. This does not mean becoming rude. It does not mean ignoring people or refusing healthy conversations. Mature communication is essential in every meaningful relationship, but there is a profound difference between explaining yourself to build understanding and explaining yourself because you are afraid of being judged. Fear always speaks too much. Confidence rarely needs many words. Watch people who carry quiet confidence. They don't rush to fill every silence. They don't panic when someone disagrees with them. They don't spend hours convincing strangers that their choices are valid. They understand something that many people never learn. Your life is not a courtroom, and you are not required to argue every case brought against you. Silence has a psychological effect that most people underestimate. When you remain calm instead of rushing to defend yourself, you communicate something far more powerful than any speech ever could. You communicate certainty. You show that your decisions were made with thought rather than impulse. You demonstrate that your identity is not built on external approval. This often unsettles toxic people because they expect emotional access, they expect frustration, they expect long messages, endless debates, and emotional reactions they can use to keep the conversation going. When none of that appears, they lose the leverage they were counting on. Notice how people who manipulate others become uncomfortable when they cannot predict the response. They know exactly how to handle anger. They know how to exploit guilt. They know how to use defensiveness against you, but calm certainty creates a problem they cannot solve. You become difficult to control because you are no longer reacting. You are choosing. That distinction changes everything. Psychologically, every unnecessary explanation sends a subtle message to your own mind. It tells your subconscious that your decisions require outside validation before they stitch. They deserve confidence. Repeat that habit long enough, and you slowly train yourself to question your instincts before trusting them. The opposite habit creates the opposite result. Each time you calmly stand by a thoughtful decision without feeling compelled to justify it too. Everyone, you strengthen your self-trust. Self-trust is not built by always being right. It is built by refusing to abandon your values simply because someone disapproves. Remember, the strongest people are not the ones who win every argument. They are the ones who know which arguments are not worth entering in the first place. Imagine how much mental energy you would recover if you stopped trying to convince people who had already decided not to understand you. Imagine how peaceful your evenings would become if you no longer replayed conversations in first and wondering what you should have said differently. Imagine how much faster you would grow if that energy were invested in your goals instead of defending your existence. This is where true freedom begins. But freedom is not having everyone agree with you. Freedom is being at peace even when they don't. Your actions will always introduce you more accurately than your explanations ever can. People may doubt your words today, but they cannot argue with consistent behavior over time. Integrity is a language that requires no translation. Character is evidence that never needs a closing argument. So the next time someone demands an explanation, simply to challenge your confidence, pause before speaking. Ask yourself one question. Am I sharing this to create understanding, or am I trying to earn permission to live my own life? The answer will reveal more than the conversation ever could. The strongest voice you will ever develop is the one that no longer feels compelled to defend. Every choice, when your actions become your explanation, your peace becomes untouchable. And that is the moment toxic people realize they no longer have power over you. Remember this, the less you feel the need to justify your life, the more confidently you begin to live it. Once you stop feeling the need to explain yourself to everyone, something remarkable begins to happen. You notice that the people who once seemed so powerful over your emotions suddenly lose their us influence. That is because the next habit changes something even deeper than your words. It changes your emotional availability. Toxic people do not survive on facts, they survive on reactions. Think about that for a moment. A person who constantly criticizes you is rarely looking for improvement. A person who repeatedly brings up your past is rarely searching for closure. A person who creates unnecessary conflict is usually not searching for a solution. They are searching for an emotional response. That response is the reward they have been chasing all along. Most people never recognize this pattern because they are focused on what is being said instead of why it is being said. Psychology teaches us that behavior often reveals intention more clearly than words ever will. Someone who genuinely wants peace chooses communication. Someone who wants control chooses provocation. That distinction changes everything. The greatest mistake you can make is believing that every emotional invitation deserves your acceptance. It doesn't. Every insult is an invitation. Every unnecessary argument is an invitation. Every attempt to make you feel guilty is an invitation. Every passive-aggressive comment is an invitation. The question is never whether those invitations will come. They always will. The real question is whether you will accept them. Imagine someone knocking on your front door every single day carrying a heavy bag filled with anger, frustration, resentment, and negativity. You already know what is inside the bag, yet every day you open the door and carry it into your home. After a while, your house becomes filled with burdens that never belonged to you. Emotionally, many people live exactly this way. They carry other people's bitterness. They carry other people's insecurities. They carry other people's opinions. They carry other people's unresolved pain. Eventually, they become exhausted without understanding why. Here is the truth that many people spend years learning. Not every emotion you feel belongs to you. Sometimes you are simply absorbing someone else's chaos. Toxic individuals often project what they refuse to confront within themselves. A deeply insecure person may constantly accuse others of being arrogant. Someone who struggles with honesty may become obsessed with questioning everyone else's integrity. A person who lacks self-control often labels calm people as cold or uncaring. Projection is one of the oldest psychological defense mechanisms because it allows people to avoid facing themselves. If you don't recognize this pattern, you begin believing accusations that were never yours to carry. That is why emotional discipline is not about suppressing feelings. It is about correctly identifying where those feelings came from. There is tremendous strength in pausing before reacting. That pause may last only 3 seconds, but in those 3 seconds you reclaim control over your own mind. Instead of immediately defending yourself, you ask, is this actually true? Instead of becoming angry, you ask, why does this person need me to react? Instead of allowing guilt to take over, you ask, am I responsible for this, or am I simply being manipulated into feeling responsible? Those questions interrupt emotional autopilot. And once you interrupt autopilot, you begin living intentionally. One of the greatest misconceptions about emotional strength is that it means becoming emotionally numb. It doesn't. Strong people still feel disappointment, they still experience sadness, they still get frustrated. The difference is that their emotions no longer become the steering wheel of their lives. They allow emotions to become passengers rather than drivers. There is wisdom in that approach because emotions are valuable messengers, but they are often terrible decision makers. When someone provokes you, your first emotional reaction may tell you to fight back immediately. Your wiser self quietly reminds you that not every battle deserves your energy. When someone insults your character, your emotions may urge you to defend yourself. Your wiser self recognizes that people committed to misunderstanding you rarely change because of one more explanation. The emotionally disciplined person learns to separate stimulus from response. That space is where freedom lives. This is why calmness unsettles toxic people more than anger ever will. They have learned how to navigate your frustration. They know exactly how to escalate conflict. They understand how to keep emotional conversations going for hours, but they struggle when faced with someone who refuses to surrender inner peace. Calmness removes their leverage. Your silence removes their script. Your self-control forces them to confront something they hope to avoid themselves. Many people believe power comes from having the perfect comeback. Real power often comes from realizing no comeback is necessary. Your peace is too valuable to exchange for temporary satisfaction. Your future is too important to sacrifice for a pointless argument. Your character is too valuable to help to place in the hands of people who have already decided to misinterpret it. There comes a point in life when maturity begins to sound very different from intelligence. Intelligence asks, how do I prove I'm right? Maturity asks, is proving I'm right worth disturbing my peace? That single question has protected more relationships, preserved more opportunities, and prevented more regret than almost any other principle. The strongest individuals are not emotionally unreachable, they are emotionally responsible. They know that every reaction is an investment. Every minute spent arguing is a minute not spent growing. Every sleepless night replaying an unnecessary conversation steals energy from tomorrow's purpose. Every emotional battle accepted without wisdom quietly delays the life you are trying to tempt build, so they become selective. Selective with their words, selective with their attention, selective with their emotional investment, and over time, something extraordinary happens. People who once believed they could manipulate them begin looking elsewhere because the reward has disappeared. The cycle breaks, not because the toxic person changed, but because the emotionally disciplined person did. Never underestimate the influence of your emotional example. When you remain grounded in situations designed to shake you, you communicate confidence without announcing it. When you choose understanding over impulse, you demonstrate strength without demanding recognition. When you protect your peace instead of feeding unnecessary conflict, You become someone whose presence carries quiet authority. That kind of strength cannot be borrowed. It must be built one decision at a time. So, the next time someone tries to pull you into emotional chaos, remember this simple truth. Your reaction is a choice, and every choice either strengthens your peace or surrenders it. The moment you stop giving toxic people access to your emotions is the moment you start taking back ownership of your life. Once you learn to protect your emotions instead of handing them over to every difficult person you meet, another habit naturally begins to develop. It is one of the rarest forms of strength because it demands something that most people struggle to give up. It demands the need to stay and fight every battle. Many people believe courage means standing your ground no matter what. They imagine that strength is measured by how long they can endure an argument, defend their reputation, or prove someone wrong. But life has a way of teaching a different lesson. Some of the strongest decisions you will ever make are not about standing your ground. They are about knowing when the ground beneath you is no longer worth standing on. There is an old belief that winners never quit. That sounds inspiring until you realize that wisdom is not about refusing to leave every situation. Wisdom is knowing the difference between persistence and attachment. Persistence builds your future. Attachment keeps you trapped in battles that no longer deserve your attention. Toxic people understand something about human nature that many people fail to recognize. They know that if they can keep you emotionally invested, they can keep you emotionally controlled. They do not always need to defeat you. They simply need to keep you engaged. Think about how many arguments continue long after the original issue has disappeared. At first, the conversation is about one disagreement. Then it becomes about old mistakes. Then it shifts to personal attacks. Before long, nobody remembers how the conflict even began. The conversation has transformed into a competition of pride rather than a search for truth. That is exactly where toxic people want you, because while you are busy defending your ego, you are no longer protecting your peace. One of the greatest signs of maturity is realizing that not every conversation deserves a go. Not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. Not every accusation deserves a response. Sometimes the healthiest ending is simply your absence. Walking away has been misunderstood for generations. Many people see it as surrender because they confuse movement with defeat. But walking away from manipulation is not surrendering to another person. It is refusing to surrender yourself. There is a profound psychological shift that happens when you stop asking, "How do I win this argument?" and begin asking, "What is this argument costing me?" That question changes everything. Is it costing you your peace? Is it costing you your sleep? Is it costing you your confidence? Is it costing you your focus? Is it costing you the energy you should be investing in your own future? If the answer is yes, then the price is already too high. Every moment you spend trying to convince someone committed to misunderstanding you is a moment stolen from the life you could be building. Time is one of the few resources that can never be recovered. Once it is spent, no apology, no victory, and no explanation can bring it back. Successful people understand this at a deep level. They become extremely selective about where they invest their attention because they know attention shapes destiny. Whatever repeatedly captures your mind eventually begins shaping your life. If conflict captures your attention every day, conflict begins shaping your identity. If growth captures your attention every day, growth begins shaping your future. The choice is rarely made once, it is made repeatedly, often in small moments that seem insignificant. Someone sends a message designed to provoke you. Someone spreads a rumor hoping you will react. Someone criticizes your character instead of your actions. In those moments, you stand at an invisible crossroads. One path leads toward temporary satisfaction. You answer immediately. You defend yourself. You argue until you feel heard. The other path leads toward lasting freedom. You recognize what is happening, protect your peace, and continue moving toward your purpose. Only one of those paths creates a better life. There is another reason walking away is so powerful. It forces people to live with the consequences of their own behavior. When you constantly remain available, some people never experience the cost of disrespect. They assume you will always return, always explain, always forgive, and always tolerate what should never have been accepted. Boundaries become meaningful only when they have consequences. If every boundary disappears the moment someone challenges it, it was never truly a boundary. it was only a request. Strong boundaries are quiet, they do not threaten, they do not announce themselves repeatedly, but they simply exist, and when they are crossed, your actions remain consistent. Consistency commands more respect than intensity ever will. Many people fear walking away because they worry about what others will think. They fear being called selfish, cold, dramatic, or unforgiving. But there comes a point where protecting your future becomes more important than protecting your image. Remember, people who benefit from your lack of boundaries are often the first to criticize you for creating them. Do not mistake their discomfort for your mistake. Sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is disappointing the people who expected unlimited access to your time, your energy, and your emotions. That does not make you cruel. It makes you responsible. Responsible for your mental health, responsible for your values, responsible for the direction of your own life. The world often celebrates loud victories, but some of life's greatest victories happen quietly. They happen when you choose not to answer the message designed to provoke you. They happen when you leave a conversation that no longer has honesty in it. They happen when you stop chasing people who have repeatedly shown they do not value your presence. Those victories may never receive applause, but they shape your character more than public success ever could. As you continue growing, you will notice something unexpected. The more comfortable you become with walking away, the less often you need to. Your calm confidence changes the way people interact with you. Those who respect boundaries remain. Those who depend on controlling you slowly disappear. That is not loss, that is clarity. Every door you close on manipulation creates space for healthier relationships, stronger opportunities, and a deeper sense of inner peace. Your life becomes lighter because you are no longer carrying conversations that should have ended, relationships that should have changed, or expectations that were never yours to fulfill. Always remember this. Strength is not measured by how long you stay where you are disrespected. Strength is measured by how confidently you choose yourself when staying your peace. The moment you learn to walk away from what diminishes your spirit is the moment you begin walking toward the life you truly deserve. Once you become comfortable walking away from people and situations that repeatedly drain your energy, another transformation begins to take place. It is quieter than the others, but it is perhaps the most important. You stop looking outside yourself for permission to believe in your own worth. This is the point where toxic people begin to lose their influence completely. Most manipulation depends on one invisible weakness. It depends on your need for approval. Think about how many decisions people make every day, not because those decisions reflect who they truly are, but because they hope someone else will approve of them. They choose careers to impress people who are never satisfied. They stay in unhealthy relationships because they fear being judged for leaving. They remain silent in conversations because they want to avoid disappointing someone who has never respected them in the first place. Slowly, almost without realizing it, they begin living a life that belongs to everyone except themselves. The tragedy is that approval feels rewarding in the moment, but it is one of the least stable foundations you can build your identity upon. Praise changes, opinions change, people's expectations change. If your confidence rises and falls with someone else's opinion, your emotional stability will always be in someone else's hands. That is not confidence, that is dependence disguised as confidence. Real confidence is much quieter. It does not announce itself. It does not constantly seek recognition. It does not need to win every room. It simply knows who it is. The people who are hardest to manipulate are not necessarily the loudest or the most charismatic. More often, they are the ones who have answered a simple question that many people avoid for years. Who am I when nobody is applauding? That question matters because eventually life places everyone in seasons where recognition disappears. There are moments when your hard work goes unnoticed. There are days when your integrity is misunderstood. There are times when doing the right thing earns criticism instead of praise. If your identity depends entirely on external validation, those moments will shake you. But if your identity is rooted in your values instead of public opinion, those same moments become opportunities to grow stronger. Notice how toxic people often test this weakness. They withdraw affection to make you chase them. They offer occasional praise to keep you seeking more. They criticize you just enough to make you question yourself. This creates an unhealthy cycle where your emotional state depends on their approval. One compliment lifts you, one criticism destroys you. That is exactly the cycle you must break. The healthiest form of confidence is self-generated. It comes from keeping promises to yourself. It comes from acting according to your principles even when nobody is watching. It comes from becoming someone you can respect in private. There is an important psychological difference between self-esteem and self-respect. Self-esteem often depends on how you feel about yourself. Self-respect depends on how consistently you honor your values. Feelings change every day, values remain. That is why self-respect creates a much stronger foundation than temporary confidence. When you consistently choose honesty over convenience, discipline over comfort, and integrity over popularity, you slowly build evidence that you can trust yourself. Trust is earned, even with yourself. Many people wait until they feel confident before taking action. Life works in the opposite direction. Action creates confidence. Every difficult conversation you handle with integrity strengthens it. Every unhealthy relationship you leave strengthens it. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens it. Confidence is not a gift that suddenly appears one morning. It is the result of hundreds of ordinary decisions repeated over time. This is where your daily habits become more important than your occasional achievements. Anyone can appear confident after success. Real character is revealed before success arrives. It is revealed when nobody notices your effort. It is revealed when your progress is slow. It is revealed when nobody is encouraging you to continue. Those moments quietly shape the person you become. Another mistake people make is believing that confidence means never doubting yourself. It doesn't. Even the strongest people experience uncertainty. The difference is that they do not allow uncertainty to make their decisions. They acknowledge fear without allowing fear to become their leader. They recognize criticism without allowing criticism to define them. They listen to advice without surrendering ownership of their own lives. That balance is rare, and because it is rare, it is incredibly powerful. Imagine waking up each morning without wondering who might approve of your choices today. Imagine making decisions based on wisdom instead of popularity. Imagine saying no without guilt because your boundaries are rooted in principle rather than emotion. Imagine feeling peaceful even when someone misunderstands you because your identity is no longer dependent on being understood by everyone. That is freedom. The pursuit of approval is exhausting because there is no finish line. The moment one person accepts you, another person disapproves. The moment you satisfy one expectation, someone creates a new one. If your goal is universal approval, you will spend your entire life chasing something that cannot be caught. But when your goal becomes living according to your deepest values, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing respect, and respect quietly begins finding you. People naturally trust individuals who know themselves. They may not always agree with them, they may not always understand them, but they recognize authenticity. Authenticity has a quiet authority that performance can never imitate. Toxic people often become frustrated by individuals who no longer seek constant validation because their usual strategies stop working. Guilt loses its power, criticism loses its sting, manipulation loses its leverage. Not because the toxic person has changed, but because the foundation of your identity has changed. You are no longer standing on shifting sand. You are standing on principles. As you continue growing, remember that your purpose is far more valuable than public approval. Your future deserves more attention than someone else's opinion. The life you are building requires courage, and courage often means disappointing people who expected you to remain small. That is not arrogance, that is growth. Growth asks you to become loyal to your values before you become loyal to other people's expectations. The people who genuinely care about you will adjust to the healthier version of you. The people who only benefited from your insecurity may resist it. Let them. Your responsibility is not to manage everyone's expectations. Your responsibility is to become the person your future depends on. So, every time you feel tempted to seek permission before trusting your own judgment, pause and remember this. The strongest approval you will ever receive is the approval you earn from the person you become when nobody is watching. Build a life that reflects your values instead of chasing applause, because the moment your self-worth no longer depends on other people's opinions is the moment no one else can control your future. As you begin building your life on self-respect instead of approval, something unexpected happens. The battles that once consumed your attention begin to lose their importance. You no longer wake up thinking about how to respond to someone's criticism. You no longer replay every disagreement in your mind, searching for the perfect comeback. Instead, you begin asking a different question, one that quietly changes the direction of your entire life. Is protecting my peace more valuable than proving my point? For many people, that question is uncomfortable because we have been taught that strength means winning. We celebrate the person who has the final word. We admire the individual who never backs down from an argument. We often confuse victory with volume, believing that the loudest voice is the strongest one. But experience teaches a different lesson. The strongest people are not those who win every argument. They are the ones who know which arguments are not worth entering in the first place. There is a hidden cost to every conflict. Some costs are obvious. They consume your time and your energy. Others are invisible. They slowly drain your focus, your creativity, your emotional stability, and your ability to enjoy the present moment. Think about the last time someone upset you. Perhaps the conversation lasted only 15 minutes, but how long did it continue inside your mind? An hour? A day? An entire week? That is the true cost of unnecessary conflict. Long after the words are spoken, your attention remains trapped in a conversation that has already ended. Attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess, because wherever your attention goes, your life eventually follows. If your attention remains fixed on people who create chaos, chaos becomes your emotional environment. If your attention is invested in growth, learning, meaningful relationships, and purposeful work, those things begin shaping your future instead. This is why protecting your peace is not selfish, it is strategic. Peace is not the absence of difficulty. Peace is the ability to remain internally stable even when life becomes externally unpredictable. Toxic people often misunderstand this. They assume that if they can create enough noise around you, eventually you will step into it. They expect you to defend yourself. They expect you to explain yourself. They expect you to react emotionally because that is how they maintain influence. But the moment you stop treating every challenge as a battle to win, their strategy begins to fail. Imagine standing beside a river after heavy rain. The current is strong, fast, and relentless. You could jump into the water and try to fight against it, exhausting yourself with every movement. Or you could step back onto solid ground and recognize that some forces are not defeated through resistance. They are defeated through distance. Many arguments work the same way. The more you struggle against them, the more they consume you. The wiser choice is often not to overpower the current, but to refuse to enter it. There is an important difference between avoiding responsibility and protecting your peace. Protecting your peace does not mean ignoring problems that require your attention. It does not mean refusing difficult conversations with people who genuinely care about finding solutions. Healthy relationships require honesty. Healthy workplaces require accountability. Healthy families require communication. But there is a difference between solving a problem and feeding a pattern. So a solution moves both people forward. A pattern keeps both people trapped. Learning to recognize that difference may be one of the most valuable emotional skills you will ever develop. One question can help you decide. Ask yourself, will this conversation create understanding? Or will it simply create another cycle of conflict? If the answer is conflict, then silence may be wiser than another explanation. Some people spend years trying to change individuals who have no desire to change themselves. They believe that if they choose the right words, remain patient enough, or give one more chance, everything will finally improve. Sometimes it does. Often it doesn't. Growth begins with willingness, and you cannot force willingness into another human being. You can offer honesty, you can offer kindness, you can offer clarity, but you cannot make someone value what they have already decided to reject. Accepting this truth is incredibly freeing because it shifts your focus away from controlling other people and back toward controlling yourself. That is where your real influence begins. Your peace grows stronger every time you choose discipline over impulse. Every time you decide not to answer an unnecessary message. Every time you refuse to participate in gossip. Every time you decline an invitation into someone else's emotional chaos. Every one of those moments strengthens your character in ways that are invisible at first, but undeniable over time. People often believe peace is something they discover after life becomes easier. In reality, peace is something they create by making wiser decisions while life remains difficult. That is why peaceful people are not simply lucky. They are intentional. They understand that every yes carries a hidden no. When you say yes to another pointless argument, you are saying no to time with your family. You are saying no to your personal growth. You are saying no to your creativity. You are saying no to the goals that deserve your energy far more than someone else's negativity. Eventually you realize that every unnecessary conflict demands payment, and the currency is always your attention. Protect it carefully. One of the greatest signs that you are becoming emotionally stronger is that your need to be understood by everyone begins to disappear. You stop chasing validation because you have already found something much more valuable: inner stability. That stability allows you to remain calm when others become emotional. It allows you to stay focused while others become distracted. It allows you to continue building your future while others remain trapped in yesterday's arguments. This is not weakness, it is disciplined strength. Remember that history is filled with people who wasted enormous potential trying to defeat every critic instead of developing their own character. The people who leave the greatest legacy rarely spend their lives proving themselves to everyone. They spend their lives becoming someone worth remembering. That is a very different mission. As you continue moving forward, you will discover that peace is not something another person gives you. It is something you protect through your choices every single day. You protect it by choosing your words carefully. You protect it by choosing your relationships wisely. You protect it by choosing your priorities intentionally. Most importantly, you protect it by remembering that your purpose is always more valuable than your pride. So, the next time someone invites you into unnecessary conflict, but pause before you respond. Ask yourself whether winning this moment is worth losing your peace. More often than not, you will discover that the greatest victory is not having the last word. The greatest victory is having the wisdom to walk away with your character, your focus, and your peace completely intact. Always remember this. Every battle you refuse to fight gives you more strength to build the life you were truly meant to live.